Joe Biden is reportedly riding off New Hampshire. How is that going to play out?
We are back with MAXIMILLIAN Alvarez, host of the Working People's Podcast, and Marshall Kosloff, media analyst. All right, this is a Politico report, and this dovetails with reporting we saw earlier in the campaign that Biden was basically like, Iowa, New Hampshire. I'm really making the play for South Carolina. But what Politico is saying is that they haven't been up on the air until very recently, since in the new year, that they've scaled back on staff. Of course, his team is saying, no, of course we're playing to win, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, Marshall, he can read the polls as well as anyone. Bernie Sanders is doing extraordinarily well there. You have Elizabeth Warren, also neighboring state senator. Pete Buttigieg seems to be coming up in the polls. Biden is looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think that what they're obviously banking on is the idea that they don't win these first two states, but they're going to overperform and win Nevada and South Carolina. But I think the thing they have to be incredibly careful about is Biden's entire case is about electability. It's not like the Mike Bloomberg, I'm going to get it done case. It's not the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, we have a different vision of the party's case. It's purely this guy can win elections. So if you're selling that point and then you lose your first two,
and then you're losing elections,
and then there's this 2-week period where Bernie will only become more and more and more plausible as a nominee, it seems to me that's a disaster.
Max looks so happy over there right now.
Well, I'm cracking up because I mentioned this on the show before. I don't know where this electability argument comes from, because
the media.
Biden has lost so many he is so reliably bad at running for president, and I described him before as the human jalopy of this race. Parts are flying off I'm not so sure he can read the polls as well as anybody. As Biden disintegrates before our eyes, I think that is correlates to why someone like Bloomberg is rising in the polls. We talked before about why it seemed ludicrous that Bloomberg would jump in when he was essentially a carbon copy of Biden. But I think as time moves on, his strategy is bearing out because Biden is self-destructing.
Yeah.
And I think also that translates to his kind of political execution of this campaign. One thing that really strikes me about the way that they're handling New Hampshire, right, is I think they know they're going to get whooped, but they're still trumpeting the high-level endorsements that Biden has gotten in New Hampshire as if that's fine, that's enough. And I think that more and more people who are tapped into electoral politics today are putting their faith in the rank and file and not kind of the top administrative bureaucrats who are friends with people like Joe Biden.
I think you're right. And one thing I've noticed too, let's say the caution alarm. We had a USA Suffolk poll yesterday. Biden up 6 points in Iowa. Still very possible he could win. 538 average says that he actually has, I think, about an equal shot of winning Iowa as Bernie. Now, generally, I think Bernie will always outperform his polls because of the nature of his supporters. But to your point, Marshall, you talked about Nevada. Well, let's throw up this Nevada poll that we just got today.
This is California.
California, sorry. This is a California poll, which comes during Super Tuesday. And what does it show? It shows that Bernie's at 26. Biden is only at 15. I mean, that is a terrible showing for a guy who's supposed to clean up on Super Tuesday. So vulnerabilities, even in the place where he says that he's going to win, are beginning to crack in the firewall.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely insane to talk about endorsements, especially in this specific race, as a measure of success, because let's go back to 2008. 2008, everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to become the president. So a lot of people came out of the gate and endorsed her. People want to get on the train they think is going to win. But then what happens is, as President Obama, then candidate, starts doing a lot better, people start picking off. So the real question for the Biden campaign would be, if it was this week, would those same endorsements still be picking up with you? I don't think they'd be there. I don't think they'd be there at all. So the metric means nothing.
I mean, Max, I went back and looked at the history. In the modern era, there has never been a candidate who won both Iowa and New Hampshire and did not become the nominee. The only person, Bill Clinton, was able to pull off losing both Iowa and New Hampshire and then going on to win the nomination and the presidency because two different candidates won the states. I think that's what Biden was banking on. They were looking at the numbers. They thought Pete or someone else might win Iowa. Maybe Bernie will win New Hampshire. It'll be split. We can go into Nevada and South Carolina and be good to go. Now you're looking at very possible that Bernie Sanders could win both. And then I think you're kind of hosed.
Yeah, I think you are. And I mean, let's not forget that, Clinton had, after New Hampshire, this kind of, comeback kid narrative, whereas Biden's narrative is like, where did he go?
Right.
Right? I mean, like, and y'all have talked about this on the show before, right? I know what I see, right? And I know anecdotal evidence doesn't really mean much, but like literally everyone I know is in Iowa or New Hampshire canvassing for Bernie. Everyone I know is making, hours of calls and texts a day. His ground game is incredible. At his rallies, the support, the enthusiasm is just palpable. Whereas Biden, every time I see a clip of his rallies, he's essentially like wearing his pants over his belly button and boxing a kangaroo to like mild applause. Like I don't think people can discount what they're seeing, which is that most people who support Biden are clinging to some kind of waning hope that he can be electable, that he can weather this storm. But I think he's doing his best to show that actually he can.
Go ahead, Mark.
And I just want to push back on something. The idea that this is over after, let's say Sanders cleans up in the first 2 states. What's going to happen is the Democratic establishment is going to freak out.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what we're going to get.
They're already freaking out.
They're already freaking out, but I think it's going to really get palpable, right? Like there's the idea of everything collapsing, and then there's when things actually collapse.
Yeah.
So
if he wins Iowa, it's going to be total freak out meltdown.
And if he wins New Hampshire, good Lord.
And so if I was the Biden campaign, what I'd be afraid of, though, is that people are going to ditch Biden. Yeah. It's not as if President Obama, who's started to telegraph this, but he's going to come out against Sanders. He's not going to come say, hey, I'm coming out against Sanders. You need to sort of work with Biden. Like, there's a high chance he goes to someone like Mayor Bloomberg, maybe a person like Elizabeth Warren to sort of like stem that Bernie slide. So I think that this is going to just be,
No, it's a good point. We've made this point so many times, which is that the real thing that Bloomberg is purchasing here is the ability to swing a contested convention if it comes down to that. Because if you purchase X amount of delegates,
if you do that.
He will. But I mean, him and Biden could maybe cobble enough together, like a joint ticket or something like that, in order to stop Bernie. Because let's be honest, I mean, there's so many more candidates in this. And I think unlike 2016 with Ted Cruz and John Kasich and all those other candidates, the sheer amount of money and staying power that these people have, I think, is relatively stronger than the Republican field.
I mean, that's the thing is that the reason why there was never one Republican alternative.
Yeah.
Everybody was divided, right? And you have a very similar thing going on here. You think Pete's going to drop out when he's still got millions in the bank? You think Warren's going to drop? Klobuchar, if she gets the New York Times endorsement. Bloomberg is certainly going to be sticking around. These people aren't going anywhere.
And you've talked about this a lot, Sagar. I think a difference between 2016 and 2020, from the Republican to Democratic perspective, is that Bernie is just not willing to attack. During that process, President Trump was eviscerating every single one of those other, I was going to say contestants, like it's a reality show, but every single one of the other people. Like he was willing to just go out and destroy every single one of those things. I think there's an open question whether or not Bernie has, I think, the killer instinct and the aggression. And in some ways, that's a good thing.
It's also just not who he is, right? I mean, as much as we compare, and I think there are comparisons to be made between the anti-establishment dynamics, you don't want to go overboard with that. They are very different people.
They're totally different.
With very different styles and very different appeal. So I'm not sure that him going just like scorched earth, lying Ted and little Marco against his opponents would be the right move for him. But it is going to get very interesting here very quickly. Guys.
Oh, sorry.
We have to wrap. Sorry. We love you. We'll talk more after the cameras are off. Thank you, guys.
Tomorrow on Rising, former Clinton advisor Richard Goodstein weighs in on Hillary's attempts to be relevant in 2020.
And Lee Drutman joins us to discuss his new book, The Two-Party System is Destroying America. That'll be a good one. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.